So spoiler alert, the Puma Fast-R Nitro Elite 3 was way quicker than the other 4 shoes in this test.
Hello everybody, hope you're doing okay. Welcome to Rowledge. Now I've come here to do a 1K circuit 5 times in 5 shoes. About time I did a shoe off, isn't it? So these are all the carbon plated racers that I've got recently. We've got the Puma Fast-R Nitro Elite 3, which I raced in the other day. We've got the almost forgotten about Saucony Elite 2. We've got the Puma Deviate Nitro Elite 3, so I'm interested to see how the Pumas compare. We've got the Adios Pro 4s and we've got the Vaporfly 4s. So what I'm going to do, Matt has sent me a session of 5x1K with 90 seconds. I'm going to improvise a bit, give myself a bit extra to change shoes. Looking for about a 6-minute mile pace for this 1K. It's kind of a flattish circuit round Rowledge and it's hopefully exactly a nice loop, so I can nip back into the car park over there, change shoes and see how we go. Of these, I would say that the Fast R's should be the quickest, I would say, based on my testing so far, and these ones will certainly be the spongiest. So yeah, it remains to be seen. Oh, and for warm-up, I'm going to use just the Velocity Nitro 3s. I might just do a lap of the circuit just to get myself a bit looser before I go into the first carbon-plated shoe, as it were. Okay, so I've decided to wear the Puma Deviate Nitro Elite 3s first. These are the shoes beloved of Andy FOD Runner, who set PBs almost every week recently. A couple of 5Ks, well under 16 minutes. I think he set his 10K under 33 minutes, and I think he set his half marathon earlier in the spring. So yeah, must be a good shoe, and he's got exactly the same colourway and exactly the same size. So see how they go for me. I thought they were a bit too sort of like firm and a bit too ordinary for me, but now just walking about, I can feel the rocker in them, and I think Andy does like rockered shoes. I'm not so keen on rockered shoes. That's maybe why the USL is not so much to my liking. I feel like I'm almost sort of like landing on a bit of a curve with that one. It was a bit like the New Balance 1080 back in the day. So yeah, anyway, let's see how we go. I don't want to cane this one too much, but I also want to get onto a reasonable start. I did about 4:15 in the Velocity Nitro 3. Bit of a sleeper shoe, actually. I hadn't been wearing it much, and I wore it a lot last summer. Got it about 150 miles. I've taken it out for a few runs last couple of weeks and quite enjoying it, actually. So yeah, nice sort of like lightweight-ish, low to the ground, bit of ground feel type daily trainer, suits my inclinations quite well. Right, let's get on with this Deviate Nitro Elite 3 rep and into this session then. I've also got the Instago 3S on my shorts just to give you a POV view of the course and get some metrics for the first one. It might be a bit dark by the end, so won't do it for all of them, I don't think. Okay, Deviate Nitro Elite 3 is actually a bit softer than I thought, actually. I actually quite like them. I think it was a nice smooth surface that we got here, and it's almost flat, just a few little bumps here and there, but you know, it's good as flat. And I think I did about a 3:53, so about 6:12 minutes per mile pace, so that was good. I felt like just exactly the right pace for the first one. Now I'm into the Vaporfly 4s. Now this is going to be interesting because I kind of feel that these are good for very short distances, but I haven't been so enamored with them over sort of like longer intervals, but we'll see how we go. See if I can now get these intervals at a fairly similar whack. I might use racing activity on my Garmin to help me do that. Okay, Vaporfly 4's done. That was 3:51, so pretty much the same pace, just slightly quicker. I think I felt like I was trying just that bit harder, just to sort of like on that second one. And first thing I noticed, it was just slightly lighter on foot. I think it was about 30 grams lighter, and the fact that just a bit more unstable. I think just a bit looser. Although they are a very light shoe, I have found that there's quite a lot of room. So in that sense, it's not like a wide shoe, but for a racing shoe, 200 grams, then you think there's not much to them at all. But yeah, that very nice upper. Anyway, I did the job, but just to sort of like, you feel like after a while that sort of instability is going to work against you. The lockdown of the Pumas seem a lot better. Now going into the bounciest of all the shoes. This is the Saucony Endorphin Elite 2. Now a bit of a sleeper shoe, this one, isn't it? I think Saucony have like almost like gotten a bit quiet. I mean, they were sort of almost the brand that everyone was talking about, and they also dropped a bullet by not having a speed shoe. I think the Speed 5's due out soon. The Pro 4 was a bit of a damp squid. No one seemed to like it. And the Elite 2 seemed to get issued like last summer for the Olympics. Got sent to a load of influencers who said, oh, this is like soft and really unstable. And of course, by the time it came out, nobody could really care about it. So I got a pair and I quite like them, but yeah, you just got to get used to them. And let's see how we do on the corners on this one. Anyway, right, third one down. I think it's been about, you know, I'm having about 5 minutes rest between these now, so I should be nicely loose, shouldn't I? Okay, I might have to take it back on the Endorphin Elite 2s. They feel incredibly bouncy, but also rather unstable through the corners, and there are quite a few sharp corners on this course, especially at about a 6-minute mile pace. But that was the fastest one, 3:47. You could argue I was perhaps trying a bit harder, but it did bounce me along very nicely. And I think it might be a very nice straight line cruiser, which I suppose is the whole idea of a marathon shoe, isn't it? But would that stat just get to you after a while? It's okay for a 1K, but yeah. Now I'm into the Adios Pro 4 from Adidas. This will effectively be the next softest shoe, I think, and I can already feel the stack. But yeah, this one is the only shoe that I've got half a size up, because they don't actually do my normal size. I'm normally UK 13.5, US 14 in Adidas, but for some reason they don't make that version. They've done bizarrely a UK 14, which is a US 14.5, and no other brand does that size of shoe, so it's a bit weird, but it actually does fit me okay. Andy tried them on, and the FOD runner said they were a bit big for him, which is a bit odd because his feet are a few millimeters more than me, but he does like very tight shoes because he seems to like shoes where he cuts the toe out, doesn't he, and then he seems it's okay. So he must like his thumb width to be perhaps sort of like half a thumb width, whereas I do like it now to be a thumb width, and certainly there is in these, but the problem is that then it just becomes a bit loose. Anyway, let's get on with this one. Okay, the Adios Pro 4 is done. I'd say they're the shoes so far that I like the least. I think the fact that they are half a size bigger than I normally take, I did start to actually notice that, a bit more baggy. And yeah, but I think as a result, it's just slightly more unstable than some of the other ones. Just the lockdown maybe not so good. But having said that, I still did a 347. So I think that was as fast as any of the other ones. I think that might be equal fastest with the Endorphin Elite 2. So probably just showing that I'm now getting into my groove here. So now we've got on the Puma Fast-Star Nitro Elite 3s, the shoes I wore for the 5-mile race the other day. Now in theory, according to all the stats in these research papers and all the influencer hype, these should be the fastest shoes, but I'm not going to try and absolutely cane it, but I might just sort of see if I can nudge it a bit under there, so maybe we can get about a 345, just see what the heart rate does, and see if it's any worse than the other two. But it is my last one. I've had a recovery now of 5 minutes, so exactly right compared to the other one. So let's get into this then, last one. Okay, not sure that it's the shoes or a bit of the last rep effect, but that was a 334. That was way quicker than all the other ones. So I could argue that I was actually trying for that. They didn't feel amazing, the Fast Stars, but they kind of feel like they are sort of, in a way, more natural than those really high stack shoes like the Endorphin Elite and the Adios Pro 4. I feel a bit more connected to the ground. I guess the shoe that was most similar to that was the other Puma shoe. I think I just wore that one first. It'd be interesting to swap them around and wore the Deviate Nitro last, whether that would be any different. But yeah, can't really argue with those times. I didn't really feel I was absolutely caning it. I think I was definitely trying a bit harder. So I think I need to look at the stats closely to identify how much of an effect it was on that last rep one, because you always get that last rep quicker, don't you? I think it's almost inevitable. So yeah, the thing with them now is just walking around in them, I can kind of feel my big toe on the right at the front, and you feel like it was really wanting to sort of rock you forward there. So going slowly in these isn't really a great option. So I think it's a shoe, back in the old days, you never used to warm up in your flats, did you? Or warm down, especially. I think it's getting to the point that it's a bit like that. And maybe also the fact, yeah, sometimes you actually need to save these carbon plated shoes because they've only got so much shelf life. Don't know how long this TPU stuff will last. But yeah, an encouraging session, and I think also the fact that I'm getting fitter, although it's only a 5-minute recovery between them, so that's very generous, really. It's almost a full recovery, and it wasn't absolutely caning it. I wanted to make sure I got through the session without having lactate on the sort of second or third rep. But in terms of then taking that to a race, I've got that muscle memory now of around about a 6:12 pace, which would be a lot faster than I've done, I think, actually in a 5K. So yeah, that's encouraging. That's actually what you need in training, isn't it? To actually get just used to just slightly faster what you're more comfortable with. So when you come to the race, from when you start off, you can like zoom through the sort of the first quarter, first third of it without really thinking about it, and then I start working over halfway. I think when I've been my fittest, that's been like it. And it was a bit like that the other day in the 5-mile race. Then I was cautious on purpose, holding back a bit, and then I really had a bit more at the end. So you feel like you can actually get through the whole race and actually race the whole race rather than sort of almost racing the first quarter of it and then you're just sort of like hanging on for grim death for the rest of it. Anyway, I'll do a little warm down now, and we'll go and look at the stats and see what we think. See you inside in a minute on the spreadsheet.
Well, everybody, so here's the spreadsheet. So a reminder of what I did. 5 by 1K at a bit faster than 5K pace, I would say. I also did a warm-up lap in the Puma Velocity Nitros at about what turned out to be sort of sub-3 marathon pace, 6:57. I did 4:17 for that. And then there was a solid effort in these. I started off with the Puma Deviate Nitro Elite 3, 3:53 there. That was a good effort. I think there's an element in this that I got bit faster as they went on because I was a bit looser. Although I did have a good, nice warm up for about 2 miles, then this 1k sort of tempo effort one, I did feel like I was warming into the session, just finding what sort of speed I could do. So when I got into the Vaporfly 4s, I did notice that they just felt a lot lighter, but just not that sort of response back off the road. But you can see that I actually did a reasonable time in it. And when I went into the Endorphin Elite 2 and the Pro 4, you could really notice the extra sort of stack and bounce in those two shoes, especially the Endorphin Elite 2. And I was a bit surprised, pleasantly surprised in fact, by the Endorphin Elite 2, because I think I went faster in them than I thought. The Adios Pro 4, although I did exactly the same time as the Endorphin Elite 2, I didn't feel that comfortable in them, and they are the heaviest, in inverted commas, of these shoes, bar the daily trainer that I use for this warm-up. And the Vaporfly 4s are the lightest, with the Deviate Nitro Elite 3s second lightest. But yeah, it's quite nice now to have shoes which are lighter than the Vaporfly 1 in these sort of special carbon racers, as it were. So yeah, you can sort of see that these first 4 ones, I think it was a fairly similar effort, and in classic sort of heart rate drift here, more or less. You could argue that when I put the Endorphin Elite 2 on, I actually sort of went down in heart rate, although the max was the same and the second half average was the same. So you could say on that evidence that the Endorphin Elite 2 was faster than the Vaporfly, because I went 2 and a bit seconds quicker. You could argue more or less the same heart rate, if slightly less. And then when I put the Pro 4 on, I felt I was having to work a bit harder there, and you see the average went up by 2 beats. And I still managed to get the same time. The last one, I think undoubtedly I did put some more effort into the Nitro Elite 3, but it really just surprised me by the fact that I was, 13 seconds quicker for only 2 beats per minute higher on heart rate, also on the average, also on the max, and also on the second half average. So I think there's an element that some of those 13 seconds, because I tried just that bit harder, but you'd expect even on heart rate drift that half of that 2 seconds difference would be just the fact it was the last rep. So I think on this, you would have to say that on this evidence, not exactly the most scientific of tests, that there's got to be something in these Nitro Elite 3s for sure. And yeah, interesting, I got a very strange training load on my Garmin. It was like double the others. I'm not quite sure that's quite correct, but anyway. So let's have a look at the other metrics. Vertical oscillation, I think it was interesting because I thought that in the bouncy shoes, and also the first one, I was bouncing off the road nicely. So it did kind of illustrate that. And the Pumas at the end, after going in those 2 very sort of soft high stack shoes, it did feel like I was lower to the ground. It did also reflect the fact that I had a lower VO there. It's kind of what, simplicity, the sort of amount of bounce on the road. So that was interesting. The cadence, the cadence was sort of going up. I noticed that before, actually. I mean, obviously the cadence is going to be higher on the last one because I was running faster, but I think when I'm sort of fresher, I'm able to sort of stride out a bit more and keep that cadence down a bit. Although, having said that, the stride lengths were fairly similar for the first 3 there, were noticeably high on that 151 and the cadence. So, yeah, are you a stride runner or are you a cadence runner? Well, I mean, basically, when you go faster, you increase both your cadence and your stride length, as you can see here. And, yeah, so I did. So, one day I'll get some Asics shoes if I ever do my size. And then I did a warm down in the Pumas, and even at warm down pace still managed a 7:23 for that same lap. It was a very nice warm evening, to be fair, although I had played golf in the morning, so I was a bit tired by then. I think I've been up best part of 20 hours by then, or so it seemed. So here's some of the other stats here. So yeah, what do you make of all this? I mean, I think this is interesting because I think it was a good session. Not quite the session I was meant to be doing. I was meant to be doing 5x1k with 90 seconds, which undoubtedly I wouldn't have been able to go as fast. But I just wanted sometimes to test all these different shoes that I get. The only shoe I didn't test was the Streakfly 2, although I had the ultimate test in the Bolton Mile, didn't they? I didn't really think that shoe sort of quite fitted in with this, and obviously I only had 5 reps, so I could only at maximum try 5 shoes. And I think ideally in these sort of tests, when they do them in a lab test, you would run at least twice and you would vary the order a bit, so that there wasn't any obvious bias to which shoe you ran first. I mean, undoubtedly the Puma Deviate Nitro Elite 3 was probably the slowest because I took it the first and maybe was a bit cautious. Although, if you look at the sub-20 pace, that's 6:26, 4 minutes. So, in that sense, it bodes well for my next 5k, which I think will be in the next Vets AC1 in June. So yeah, what do you make of all this? I thought it was an interesting test, both of my fitness and the shoes. So anyway, I hope you found this interesting. Like and subscribe with that, and see you next one then. Bye.